They're in there. Do you want them to
Fantastic. All right. I don't know. People complaining that nothing was recorded. Although I'm not really sure how useful and interesting will be. Sorry about the noise in the office. People talking and hanging out. But yeah, what are you up to?
Working mostly. Haven't actually dug that much into ShareJS in quite a while.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
The last time I was really doing anything, I had like the tree OT type kind of working.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can't remember what we talked about a couple weeks ago, but I still sort of want to play around with like using that to make a data synchronization layer for like browser client, browser server stuff, and just like keep all of the server's data in a single JSON tree, which would be interesting and fun. Yep. And then just use the client and the server both to like just modify data in that shared state and do all synchronization like that. Yeah, I wrote up some code to see, see how much you could do with that. I also really want to at some point take, I think I mentioned this as well, but like take your like JavaScript, get a really kick-ass like JavaScript environment that gives you like information about all the different variables and like context-aware information everywhere, and then like pull that into an editor or something. Yeah, what do you know?
That actually should be pretty possible.
Right. Yeah.
You'd have to like have some kind of context of the running program and like and maybe something more usable than stepping through step by step in the debugger.
Yeah, but it should. I mean, like, I keep thinking about this every time I read about. I mean, did you see the thing about every time someone comes up with a new like, hey, we've got some crazy JavaScript compiler that like knows all the types of all of your stuff and then uses that information to do optimization, but they never actually expose any of that information, and getting that information back out of the JavaScript interpreter and using that then in your editor obviously would be super useful. But it's one of those like abstraction problems that you just need to expose the right abstractions to the right levels and the right layers, and then have an editor that can use it, have a compiler that produces it, and so on. But I don't think there's any. I mean, there's only technically hard, and that would be really cool.
You use Vim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering where this NeoVim's gonna go.
I haven't looked much at. So what's the deal with NeoVim? I think I liked it once, and they had some like weird different from my classic Vim keybinds and stuff.
Well, so basically they're just trying to make it so like the plugin architecture is completely different. You can actually have like asynchronous processes communicating with it. They're like stripping out like the base event loop that they had in Vim and trying to replace all the I/O with libev.
Yep. Okay.
And so like a bunch of things like that. But the thing is that would totally allow for something like ShareJS server to be communicating with Vim.
Yeah, there seems to be a like proliferation of hackable editors that are appearing lately. Like there's that, and there's also, I mean, Atom's gone open source, which is nice. And then there's like buckets or whatever it is, and and obviously Sublime Text has like Python plugins.
That light table thing.
Oh yeah, light table. I haven't really messed around with Clojure at all, which I sort of forgot about. It seems like one of the languages that people are smart say that is good, and Rich Hickey or whatever his name is, the guy who made Clojure, is really smart. But there's that as well. Actually, and the Clojure guy keeps writing blog posts that are interesting and talk about interesting things. I wonder if there's like people who hang out and talk about that stuff, or if it's just people disparate and not connected. Because if people do talk about that stuff, I kind of want to go and talk to them about it as well.
Yeah.
I guess should just make something. Should just like make an editor, or like grab NeoVim or grab any of them and do it like that. Is NeoVim a complete like new code base, or is it?
No. They're basically started out with Vim's code base.
Yep.
They went through and stripped out all of like the if-defs type and different things like that are for like, hey, if you're compiling on for this like ancient device or whatever.
Yeah.
So they stripped out all those, supposedly took it from like something like 300,000 lines of code down to 160,000 lines of code.
Yeah. I looked into a while ago like how hard it would be to integrate ShareJS into Vim, like actual Vim.
Yep.
And I swear like 2/3 of the lines of code in Vim are if-defs, and I was just trying to find the data structure that stores the text in the document, like in the buffer, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Like it's just hidden behind layers and layers of hash defines and so on.
Yeah. So I did something similar, except for I was going in trying to just get to the core event loop. And I was like, I wonder if I could tap into the event loop to like trigger like different keys from like another program running.
Right. Yeah. I think Jeremy at one point actually got something working. Vim has some plugin system for being remotely controlled by something or other, and he got that.
So that's like through the make and edit like cycle.
Right.
So like that fills like the quick fix list and stuff like that, and then you like can hook in programs to actually listen on that and like try to actually do stuff with it. There's someone who tried to have set up basically something like ShareJS with Vim.
Yep.
And it ended up, it was terrible. You could get it, you could break it so quickly.
Yeah. The one that Jeremy built, you could break. I mean, it was just concurrency problems. Hey, you should join us.
Oh, okay.
That's time.
Sure.
Yeah,
I guess that's time.
Yeah.
Hey, Cryptic, Joseph.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Good, how are you?
Good.
So, you finally have a microphone, Cryptic, that's cool.
I actually didn't do anything different this time. Just for whatever reason, it works. And it didn't before.
This is great. macOS. I have sometimes where
Hey Nate, what's up?
But yeah, if you plug and unplug like an external display sometimes. Anyway, there's like a magic command one of my friends showed me, which is like, basically you kill -9 some arbitrary obscure macOS process, and it gets automatically restarted, and then the camera starts working again because we're good at computers. It's hard. Yeah. But yeah, we were just talking about Vim and doing editor integration and stuff.
Payment integration?
Yeah, with ShareJS.
I still want to at some point have get say type information, right, and then put that in a ShareJS JSON document, and then have that document be shared with an editor, and then also of course have the editor be sharing the contents and the buffer and stuff as well, and then you could add a compiler that was compiling live, and then would be annotating the code live, and then so there'll be like a two-way street with the editor getting the syntax information and type information, all sorts of things straight from the compiler. And then you could have like an editor that would be totally type agnostic. Like it wouldn't know any programming languages. It would just speak whatever this language was, whatever the interaction was. And then and then the compiler would then just do all of the work for syntax completion and highlighting and all of that stuff, and free up. And you would get obviously much better language integration in any editor that you use, because then then the compiler would be like, hey, like this is the types that we think all this stuff is, or like V8, or like your tests could run and be like, yeah, these are all like, could add an extra layer of data, which is like, here are all the lines that are actually executed by your tests, and you could just like tap a key in your editor and you would like see that information revealed, which would be sweet.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're gonna do multiple clients here, same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, trivially, you could have multiple editors, and you could pair program, and it would all of the things would just fall out naturally.
Parallel unit test runner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you type, either you press a button or automatically you just have the unit test rerun and then re-annotate the tests, the tests in the code with all the errors that happen. That's cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, did you see, guys? We have created a pretty big repository of a couple of Russian programmers working on FAQ use on Derby.
Yeah, I appreciated that. So people are documenting things since I'm bad at it.
By the way, I should point out as well that this is being recorded and will appear on YouTube at some point.
don't say anything you don't want on the internet, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, so what's the deal? What has happened?
I haven't even read it yet, but you could probably bring me up to speed. I know some people started documenting some stuff.
Yeah. So we have actually we have 3 tutorials right now on Russian. We started translating them to English right now, and we have FAQs by Artur Zayat started doing them, and then we also fill in all the gaps. And some guys started to translate it into English too. So hopefully we'll get everything like the tutorials in English, like and even tutorials for the 0.6. So they are not for 5 version, for 0.6.
That thing's gonna get killed now, and it's like so buggy. Everyone will quickly move over. I'm not worried about legacy support. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully in about 1.5 weeks we'll have a good starting point for newcomers.
Nice.
That'll be great. Yeah, we're wrapping up our port of our app to 0.6, and it's been a big project, but I've learned a lot, so we'll contribute back some patterns and stuff we've picked up.
Has like Derby been stable, like calming down? Like, you making any changes on Derby, or is it?
It's stabilizing. There's 2 things remaining that are like really kind of. There's a couple APIs that I was thinking about changing, which are mostly just names. There's like this $ vendor, and I'm thinking about changing it to location, which is a small thing, but I realized it's actually just tracking the URL. And we have a lot of list filters in our app, and we do a lot of URL generation. Like, there's a ton of links everywhere. Everything's a link. And so one thing what we used to do a lot was like respond to specific events and then try and like figure out how to change the links. And it turns out that that pattern got terrible and like the code was flaky. So what we basically learned is that if you directly drive the individual components on the page, like the individual filter, from just the actual like current URL as well as whatever the current data is, and it's completely independent, it works a lot better than if you try and sort of like holistically figure out the state of the app at any moment. It's a lot better to have a lot of independent things that work from sort of the base state. So that was a big learning from the first time we implemented a really complicated app. And so we've been using bindings to the actual parameters in the URLs pretty extensively. And then the other thing we learned from that is we used to have a really complicated system. I don't know if you guys are all familiar, but like the Derby transitional routing feature was this kind of idea I had. It was never really like well thought out, but I just kind of hacked it in there. And it's kind of a cool idea. It's basically you can like drive the state of your app by just having links, and then instead of doing a full page render, even client-side page render, we can oftentimes patch up the state locally. Like if we're on a list, but you're sort of just changing the filter, we don't have to re-render the whole page. We only have to re-render parts of the page. So there's some code in there to like let you handle specific state changes from here to there. But it really doesn't pair super well with a lot of other ways that things work. So like the real-time data binding isn't like a description of sort of going from something to something, which is much more imperative style. It's more declarative. It's like, I want my state to be bound to this state. And transformed in this way. And so mixing those two tended to lead to a lot of weird edge case bugs where we just like ended up not anticipating something. And what I've been moving toward is much more declarative universally. And anyway, long story short, I'm probably going to yank out transitional routes in lieu of something much simpler, which is more like this idea that you can basically say, within this pattern, this URL pattern, just call this function, and then I'll decide whether or not I can handle it. And if so, don't actually render. But if not, go ahead and like you go through the normal routes. I think it's kind of a good compromise of still having like a traditional routes framework, which actually is really nice for server rendering, and at the same time having something that's more like a state machine. It's sort of a hybrid. It's like you define many state machines for parts of your app that you can fully specify. For us, is a pretty good model. Because we have a lot of pages that are just pages, and then we have a lot of pages that are like really complicated with like shit ton of URL parameters, and like you just really want to like use the right tool for the right job. So I'm thinking about changing that, which is a pretty big change, but most people don't use that feature, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. And then what was the other thing? Oh, well, the whole like the way that the events get propagated could be a lot more efficient, but I don't think that that'll change the API in any substantial way. It'll be pretty internal only. So not a lot of major changes. Oh, I changed one thing which I haven't like published yet, but it's on master, which it's basically there was this middleware that I was doing to like render the scripts, and it's kind of a silly thing to like render a bunch of stuff and browserify it and then hold it in memory and then serve that string up. It's a lot better just to like serialize it to a file and then use a static file server, this kind of thing. So if you're serving like a megabyte or like whatever file, it's silly to keep it as a string in memory. It's just silly. So I changed that a little bit internally. It's a small change, but we'll have some small downstream things. A lot of little stuff like that. There's one or two naming things that I was considering changing, but I guess the long story short is nothing major.
Oh, also one of the latest commits, you have introduced strip IDs function, which makes when you bundle the module, when you serialize module, right? After that, you bundle it and send to the client and deserialize it over there. So you strip all IDs before you do the serialization. What's the sense of it?
Yeah, that was a change in Racer because the Racer bundle was not written in a way that was particularly efficient. It was just like, let's get this shit done. But then we were looking at it, we're like, wow, like 10% of this data is just repeating the same UIDs over and over again, and like we could just compress like 10% out of this by like just restructuring it.
So Mongo documents obviously have a doc name, right? And ShareJS keeps the doc name and passes that around. The doc name ends up being the underscore ID property if you're storing data in Mongo, which makes sense. But also stores an ID property on all the documents, which is repeating the same data. So we just removed it over the wire and then put it back again because it made it. I mean, that was this redundant information.
Okay.
It also is kind of dangerous to like potentially have the IDs be different. The whole point of having the ID in the document is that it's convenient when you're writing a lot of things, like you're iterating over a list of search results. It's like really painful to try and keep track of the IDs and also the documents when it's like in a list format. It's just because it's not a good data structure for that. So just having the ID as a property is handy. That's really what it comes down to. And so now Racer just like basically adds the ID when it gets something back from the server. So that was a small change, but like should be transparent to most code, with the exception that we're not storing the IDs in the database twice now. Also, if you were querying on there was another gotcha, which is people would like query on the ID, not underscore ID, which is bad because like Mongo has an index for underscore ID, but not for ID, obviously, because you don't specify it. So it avoids a big gotcha performance-wise, stuff like that. There's a couple good reasons for that. Yeah, and I just like restructured the bundle a lot to like be more efficient.
Okay.
Scripted this message saying he's got to cut it out. That was cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Mirosh. We can't hear you. Your microphone is off. Nope, it's off. Can't hear you.
Yeah, no sound's coming out. I can see his mouth moving.
Yeah.
We can only see you. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we also did the updates so that stylus and less aren't included. That's other little things. But
Yeah.
shape up. Yeah.
What? Yeah.
And like clean up over here. Good.
We also did a small preprocessor inside the preprocessor stuff. So Vladimir, he made CoffeeScript working inside Jade.
Inside of Jade to to create Derby templates, which I like, oh my god, wow, okay. It's cool. I still write my templates in HTML because I'm old school, but the Jade integration is very nice, actually. It's just, I don't know, I'm kind of old school that way. I do use CoffeeScript, but I like HTML better than Jade for whatever silly neck reasons.
Okay.
I kind of like Jade, actually. Yeah? Well, now you can use it. Derby supports it.
Yeah, well, actually, we have about 4 projects right now, and a couple of them are in production already. So they're all written in Coffee and in Jade and on 0.6, and they're all working pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, I actually just made some big-ish changes also to the default page template. So the reason was motivated largely by like our stuff. So I noticed that first of all, there was like an issue with replacing the entire document at once in old versions of WebKit, which apparently was used in iOS 7, which is still pretty common. I'm not the best at old browser support yet, but iOS 7 is still pretty common. And so there was like, that was an issue, and then there was also this issue where like it would re-render the styles, which would cause this weird flash of unstyled content in certain situations. So anyway, long story short, the page template's a little less flexible now is the downside, but it's a lot more efficient, where it now doesn't re-render the styles part. It only re-renders the title and the body.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And so you have actually, yeah. So I remember that in your rendering code, you just replace the whole document. That's right, with the head and with everything in it. And does it mean that we will be able to plug in those modules which are so they're like Facebook module and similar kind of modules which add their own DOM elements, and whenever we render stuff in Derby, it gets all screwed up?
Probably not, because it would still be added to the body ultimately, and then it would still get overwritten because it replaces the entire body.
So you play. I was also thinking, is it possible to, instead of rendering the whole like body, to just render into like simple div inside of a body?
Yeah, though it's actually really useful to like add classes to the body for a couple of reasons. Like specifically, we have a lot of things that are like on top of the page, and the best way to add style sort of structure is to limit your styles by like a body class sometimes, because it is the easiest way to like target something that's always on the page. If it's in a div and you pull it out of the div, you might not have that containing style or the containing class to style against. So it's actually really useful to update the body element itself. That could just be updated separately as like a binding, I guess. And
you mean
like also this question of like
you use this stuff like which detects whether the browser supports different CSS features, right? Like Modernizer?
Oh,
or similar?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really bothered like figuring out whether all those things work. I'm not at that level of like. We still have to support old browsers. We're like not even there with Derby supporting old browsers yet. It's like much more of the framework does. Saddle actually has tests for old browsers that work, but there's just a shit ton of stuff. I mean,
well, actually, 0.6 works much better with older browsers than 0.5.
Built to, but it doesn't. I haven't been careful about like shimming certain methods that aren't available, for example. So probably we'll just throw, because like, well, I'll use some modern method that I didn't shim or something. But I did specifically write a bunch of things in a way that I know will work, even though I haven't written the code yet. Like the event listeners, for example, should be shimmable in old IE, but currently I haven't written it. But it should be easy to add. My intention was I was going to add a second module where you just include it for like old browser compatibility.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Now, so right.
Yeah.
Compromise, because we for our product we don't care. Like we don't support old browser. Period.
So you support something like Google, like only 2 latest versions, or?
Not even that. It's like you can use the latest version of Chrome. Thanks. It's enterprise software.
Okay. Well, for our products, yeah, it's also fine. We also support only EE, and it's fine.
Yeah.
What? Sorry?
We do test on Firefox a little bit, but we don't support it officially.
That's on IE before going.
Uh-huh.
Right there. Oh, like full Chrome on Windows at least. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, I actually just discovered a couple of issues with line endings because of Windows. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I fixed them.
When I first got the text area working in ShareJS, like to do collaborative text editing, there's a whole bunch of little obscure weird Windows things that I had to fix. I think in the end I just ran a regex over it, just replacing all the Windows new lines with Unix new lines before doing any OT stuff. Something like
I
that.
don't know if I copied that code back.
Yeah,
I might need to do that.
yeah,
But that is important.
yeah. But yeah. Anyway, there's a couple little like tricky edge cases, but otherwise, like, oh, you've opened it on Windows. Well, how about I go and replace all of this new lines with Windows? And then the two OSs just fight over it for a little while.
And they also work differently if you're updating things via HTML or not. So if you update it via HTML, or I think the value property, it does, but not if you do it as like a new text node kind of thing.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Inconsistencies are fun.
At the time, I was just using that code still uses text areas.
Yeah.
And then in text area, it's just an OS new line. I guess so the copy paste can work like naturally.
Oh, and then the other thing I added, which is new, is I added a tail section, which you can use to send something that isn't rendered client-side, because it's good for analytics tracking is why I added it for us. But there might be other things you want to add that you just want to be like a script that only is server rendered, and then client-side is just in memory, so you don't need to re-render that script and reload it over and over again. That's silly.
Yeah. For this, I just manually overridden overriding the page on the server. So yeah, with the tail section, it will be more useful.
Cool. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll probably iterate on what the default page template is over time. But my hope was that there was going to be this magic panacea of this one page template that would drive everything, and then you could customize it really well. But there's too many weird browser edge cases, and it just doesn't work. So anyway. There are now more special template things again, but there's fewer than there used to be.
Yeah.
Battle. Trying to make the fewest number of things that do all of the features that people need is hard.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
you are doing great with this. So.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying. Yeah, so I'm gonna still be pretty heads down for like a good, week or two more on our stuff. But we're very close to production ready on our stuff. So I think that minus some like sort of optimizations, like New Derby pretty much works. So I'm pretty excited about it. But there's still room for improvement. I'm trying to focus on changes that might break the API and then call 0.6.0 and try not to change the API for a while. That's my goal.
Yeah, I want to go through and add a whole bunch of documentation to Live2D. That's my next sort of thing. It's like, I don't know, I feel like it's almost like layers of paint, and the first layer is just like, I'm quite happy with Stack.
It's gotten a lot better.
It's gotten a lot better. I spent some time, so I've been kind of on holidays the last 2 weeks, which is one of the reasons why I started doing office hours last week.
Sorry, I was in DC visiting my nephews.
But we'll get better at it once it's
more of a regular thing.
Yeah,
and we're doing it earlier.
But one of the things that I was starting to look at is how hard it would be to just like add a produce like layer or something for Live2D. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with it all. It should be fine. It's just a bit of code.
Yep.
And sharding, something we'll probably be working on soon.
Yeah.
It's probably just a longer layer, but
like MapReduce means that we can do things like have stage counts. That will update. All right.
Neeraj.
Wait, so I think my mic works now, does it?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
All right, good. Awesome. Sorry about the troubles earlier. We've been using Derby now for, I guess, almost a year with Pavel. I'm not, I used to be a developer, but I haven't coded in a while, so I'm going to get back into it a little bit. For now, it's been exciting because we've done a whole bunch of projects on it. I guess I have a more higher level question around, some of the pain points we've had is when we move from like 0.5 to 0.6, one of our projects is on 0.5, and we're like, oh my god, we need to change everything to get to 0.6. And I'm worried about we'll have to do all of this stuff again for 0.7, 0.8. So I just wanted to get a sense at like higher level, when do you, is that even a reasonable question to ask? When do you see 1.0, and how much of this pain should we allocate time towards as we get there?
That's a good question. I mean, one way to think about it is like each step of the project's been like very big effort on one kind of thing. So the very first version of stuff we built wasn't even on Share, and not really worth talking about. Then the 0.3 was the first time it was like really released, which was before Share. 0.5 was like we actually built it around Share, which meant the entire data layer was rewritten completely. And we kept a lot of the same concepts, but like it was just completely new code. And then this is the first time I've actually rewritten a lot of the rendering code. And there was a good reason for a lot of the code change. So part of it was browsers actually changed really substantially in the last 3 years, which is sort of not that obvious, but the performance characteristics around what you can do in client-side code has changed really drastically, where you can create a lot of elements manually and it's really efficient. Whereas it used to be you had to use inner HTML. And that fundamental thing meant that like the framework was built around the limitations of inner HTML, and now it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Great. Because for a lot of other reasons, it's nice to have references to the actual elements that you're rendering. And so that led to some pretty substantial changes in like how things are done. The other thing is the first version didn't have a concept of components.
Yep.
Only recently become like a really like common UI pattern in the last few years.
Okay.
I mean, obviously there was the whole like Dojo widgets phase of web development, and then everyone's like, oh god, that's terrible. Widgets are terrible. Sprout Core's terrible. Oh, we hate Dojo. And then everyone's like, jQuery is the best.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it was like, wait a second, now we need something like Ever and Angular and stuff. And so there's just all these like trends that at the time people were really against like widgets.
Yeah.
And so I think we went in the other direction of like, oh, let's just make templates, and don't worry, all our problems are templatizable. But it turns out actually like self-contained things are really useful. So then everyone got really focused on components because of problems they had with the other template style. So I don't know, we're all learning. The web is learning. We personally are learning. And part of it was just like we needed to mature the technology. Part of it was first time we didn't know what we were doing. The first time we wrote every part of our stack, it's been terrible. And the second time has been awesome, pretty much. Yeah.
I guess my question is more to the future, right?
Yeah, so like basically this was the last major thing that just needed to be completely rethought. So I think that there are some other areas that will definitely change, but this is the first time where it's like, holy crap, I'm finally fixing all these things. So I've been pretty careful to only use odd number versions prior to now to indicate like use at your own risk, which if you see Unix land, you may know. And now is the first time like, hey, okay, actually this is like good enough code that you might want to use it. And I therefore intend that you could like develop something on this and keep it running for quite a while, and it'll be good enough that like you won't need to completely throw it away necessarily. But yes, there will be new versions. Things will change. We'll have better ideas. But my goal is like, if you write something on this, it will be good enough that I can go back and fix bugs in it. Whereas the other versions, I have no intention of going back and fixing bugs, and hence the even number. I meant something very specific by that number choice.
And so there is a strong incentive for us to get to 0.6.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a slow process of like learning a lot of things, but I think like we've come to a very mature like set of capabilities
Yep.
where honestly, like despite being a very like not well-known framework, still, I mean, people know of it, but not that many people use it. Derby is like actually got all of the features you would need, and we use it in a very complicated app. And do server rendering, we do client rendering, we have a Chrome extension that uses it. It will work a lot better on mobile with the new version, just because it's less resource intensive.
Oh, that was another question for mobile, right? So actually for interaction with native mobile apps.
Yeah, so the one thing that we really haven't honestly solved super well is like how do you deal with offline data, not solve problems. So if you want to do a packaged app that's like completely independent and then keeps data, uses it offline, it syncs up later, which you should be able to do. We're not going to have the whole story worked out yet, but I think the new architecture is much more friendly to the kind of computing resources on mobile. The way it works is a lot more efficient.
Yeah, that should be something that we can do. It's just, I mean, it's just going to be work on the data backend side.
Yes.
Like
so it's actually really doable, and like in the long run, our mobile story will be fantastic. But for now, it's going to be like, hey, this works as well as a a web page should on mobile. And in the future, I think it'll be like way better than average. You have all this story around like, how do you actually do offline, which no one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
we're like running 4 or 5 sites on it now. So, and we've not really done a mobile strategy yet, but we want to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like actually, I mean, Derby's pretty much just normal HTML, so it should generally work in modern mobile browsers, but the old code is just not very efficient. It was not written to be efficient. I had no intention of it being efficient, and the new code is all about being efficient. Like that was the whole point. So yeah, it'll be a lot better.
The other thing that I would say is that it's probably worth at some point spending the time to do. Well, someone, either us or someone else, should sort out WebSockets. WebSockets work much better on mobile than Browser Channel, and it's not. Yeah, it's not in the sense of like Browser Channel will still work fine, but last I checked on iOS, you got that little loading spinner like constantly as in while the Browser Channel session was active, because that's tracking do you have outstanding HTTP requests. And iOS and Android both support WebSockets natively. WebSockets work pretty reliably across proxies and stuff. Basically, on mobile, you basically always want to use WebSockets, and they'll give the users a better user experience and have better power, performance characteristics, and so on. Because the OS can make better assumptions about what's going on. So
yeah, that's probably also a problem that we dealt with when we were writing one of our applications. We tried to make it work on iOS, and images were just not loading because Racer Channel was doing long polling, and like it can only do one active connection with the server.
Only
So-
one.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So so Browser Channel, like the workaround for that at the moment is that
You use different domains.
you use different domains. So you set up a bunch of subdomains on your site, and like you have a.yoursite.com and b.yoursite.com and c.yoursite.com, and you can configure Browser Channel. Browser Channel is explicitly designed for this because obviously Gmail has exactly the same problem. The server can tell the client. You basically in the configuration for Browser Channel, you can specify a list of subdomains that you have access to, and it'll randomly pick between them every time it opens up a connection.
Yeah, we have to do this even for desktop because the connection limit limits you to a pretty small number of tabs, even in a desktop browser.
Like 6 or something.
Yeah, four tabs.
Yeah.
So it's actually really important.
Yeah. It seems kind of dumb. It's like, oh yeah, like then the browser's like, hey, don't have open too many open connections, and then we're like, hey, like don't limit how many open connections we have, and it's just like a dumb arms race. But I mean, like the long-term solution is WebSockets, and then the browser can make better. It can understand better what's going on. Maybe it's going to end up being the same situation on there, but
yeah, mobile networks, just like by their nature, also have a ton of latency when they're establishing a connection, which just does not exist in like landline networks in general. So the performance characteristics of mobile mean that more connections are substantially more bad than putting everything into one request and putting everything onto one socket. It like makes a huge difference on mobile.
Yeah. Anyway, we will eventually.
We will eventually do it. It'll also be a nice win for CPU usage.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
But if you can, then adding WebSocket support shouldn't be difficult. It's I made a little project just to get started with it, but it doesn't have reconnection support. But like a million people have written reconnection support for WebSockets. I just don't know which ones are good and reliable, and I'm kind of a stickler for things like that. Just because I've been burned so many times from like software being happy. So yeah, if anyone's keen to play around with it, then that's a great little playground, it shouldn't be hard. You just have to pass the messages back and forth, and it's abstracted out in a really nice way. Obviously, sort of brace the browser channel just needs to replace the brace of WebSocket. You're done.
Yep.
But yeah. There's a couple of like dumb places in ShareJS where I've sort of depended on the browser channel API, which I should have done. But like I don't know, it's fine.
We can fix them. They're not big.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hello, people.
So long story short, there'll be less change in the future that will be as dramatic, but no promises. It's not a 1.0. I don't know what 1.0.
I mean, we want the cool new features, so that's okay. Just want to get some sense of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first version that I intend to keep kind of the same for a while and continue to support and fix bugs. So once I do my 0.6.0, you can expect that the API won't change until I'll probably immediately make a 0.7 branch and do it like Node style. I think that works pretty well, where you have unstable and stable at the same time.
Cool.
Yeah, I should probably do something like that in ShareJS and all my stuff. I don't know. I'm pretty, on the ShareJS library side in the back end, I'm pretty happy with a lot of the stuff. There's just a couple of the features I want, and then basically it's going to be one for now as well. Yep. But yeah, we're on my stuff. It's nice. I actually might make library 1.0 as soon as I've got projections in.
The one thing I think we need is the...
sorry, not projections, presence. So,
that would be good, but the other thing I'm a little concerned about is the whole computer property thing we talked about. It'd be nice to have a story on that. At least know what we're going to do.
Yeah, maybe at least know what we're going to do. We'll talk about it. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the kind of thing that I think we could say it's 1.0 without that, and then add that as a feature. It's not sure. It's still working on things, right? That can be 1.1. Yeah, but 1.0 in the sense of like the APIs that are there aren't going to change. And,
right.
And I'm happy with them, and the code behind them is stable and good. Yeah. Also, the query code's a piece of crap, but yeah.
Oh, the one other thing I was thinking about changing before I finalize 0.6 is I think I'm going to pull the routing out entirely. I don't think it should be included in Derby default. Because a lot of projects we've been moving to this is having separate routing libraries. There's quite a lot of complexity to it, and the benefit to having the routing library included with the default thing is that people can cohesively write the same stuff that like works together. But what I've realized is that actually most of the code complexity should be in components, which shouldn't rely on routing at all. And so I think that it makes more sense for Tracks, which is the routing library in Derby, to be an add-on. This is a very easy plugin kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like opens people up to potentially using something else that's not based on Express. So
someone was asking about Express 4 and why isn't Derby using Express 4 semantics and so on.
Because I haven't gotten to it yet is the answer. But what's also a little tricky because so Express 4, the big benefit roughly is that it's like really well modularized and that you can mix up the order. So you can say like, hey, here's a route, and then here's some more middlewares, and then here's a route. And routes are just like individual middlewares instead of being one middleware for all of your routes, which is a really stupid design from the original thing. I know why they did it, but yeah. But Derby has this thing where it's like you define your app in a totally separate space where it's not server client. It's like actually like fully everything runs on the server and on the client. And so you can't just like easily describe where I want that to mix into the server side. So I don't know. Maybe apps will still export one middleware for because of that. But maybe I'll come up with an API where you can mix in different server middleware. I just don't know how to do it intuitively in a way that's like not going to be a total mess. So even in Express 4, like there's got to be some concession to the fact that you want all your like client-side routes to be like one clump. So maybe the answer to that is pretty simple. It's just have the one filter.
Yeah. Well, also about routes, I was thinking about doing something similar to Iron Router of Meteor. So they have something like in a Ruby on Rails routing system, I guess. So what do you think? Will it be useful for Derby to have something like this?
Well, people often ask, like, who don't know Derby, they're like, well, wait a second, like, why don't you automatically load this view when I go to this route? Or, like, why don't you
Yeah.
automatically load this style when I go to this route? And the answer is not that that's hard to do, because it's not. It's very easy to write that code. The reason why is that when you're on the client, we want you to be able to render any resource within a group of stuff, which Derby calls an app. And so the reason why it is the way it is so that when you're on the client, it works fully like it does on the server. And it has all the resources it needs. So I think the issue is basically like, okay, well, how do I make it do that magic thing where it like renders the right resource and doesn't include the other resources, but then does get those other resources later in an efficient way? And it's possible, but it's like complexity that was not worth adding because the benefit is actually very small in reality for most apps. You'd have to have a gigantic app for that to be worth like your time.
Yeah.
So like one day, yeah, it will support stuff like that, but like right now, it's just like not the best use of my time. It's not the most important problem.
Yeah, because actually, like we have lots of different sections of our application, and we came up with our something similar to Ruby on Rails and to Iron Router controller view and the routing system. So I was just thinking if it's gonna be worth making it useful for everybody. So it's like it's just controllers with routers and something like that.
So I think this has been an iterative process for us. Like the original Derby style that I wrote was very different than how we're writing our app now. And a lot of this is like, whatever, whatever style works for you is great, right? And like, feel free to share and everybody can learn. The current style we're using is a lot more like you create a component for absolutely everything. And the basic route itself, all it does is it maps a URL to the resources you need. And it tries to do as little as possible. The other thing that we've started doing differently is we don't use the query results directly at all. And there were a bunch of features added to Derby because it's kind of nice and cute where you're like, oh, hey, just render the result of this query. And that's great, except that when you change something that changes how it is in that query, it ends up having to wait until it goes to the server, goes to the database, gets pub sub, comes back, and then the page updates. And that's fine if you're on a different screen or you're a different person for there to be a latency there. But when you're interacting with the page, that experience sucks. So what you really want is you want your UI to be driven by the data itself rather than the query, and the query to just get the data that you need at whatever point you need it. So there's just a bunch of patterns around that where like our routes are actually really simple now, and like really all they do is get data, and that's it, period. And so I don't actually want to like over-engineer a solution that makes it so you can make lots of routes and things, because it's like actually not, in my opinion, the best way to do it, given the UI benefits of like just computing everything in like a component that has the base data and can say, oh, I'll render this list based on the client-side computed version of it, which ends up being much more responsive. So I'll publish more of these like ideas and patterns, and I mean you should publish your ideas and patterns too. And I think it's like we're all learning together, so that's really useful.
Yeah. So actually, one other question is, so you told about the components and that they should use the data. Yeah. So is there any way you're using actually querying stuff or getting it from the database from the components? So like subscribing and unsubscribing in the component itself?
So you definitely should not do that, is what I've concluded. It's not that you can't, because you can, but the reason why I'd say don't do it is because we used to, for example, also do this thing where we would have like in Server Express applications, it's not uncommon for you to have a middleware that does something, and then passes control to another middleware or a route that passes control to another route or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice and cute, but the problem with it is it makes, since you end up having to do realistically a lot of asynchronous requests, it makes it really hard for you to parallelize smartly. So, for example, we have a bunch of resources we render for a list. We also have a bunch of resources we render for this flyover thing that we have come over the list with information about a specific person in our app. And then we also have a bunch of information that's used to power some filters. And they're actually all independent of each other. And we know enough at the time that we're rendering to get all those resources in parallel. But the way it used to be implemented was in serial because the code was easier to write that way. It was horribly slow for no good reason, a terrible reason. And the reason why it happened that way was because the way our code was structured, we did a bunch of work when we got the resources to figure out how to mutate it into the state we wanted for rendering, and then figure that out later. And it just leads you down this path where if you couple the data getting to the munging for your view, you end up complicating the stuff so much that you don't even see where you're being inefficient. You don't even notice that you're doing these things in serial. I literally had no idea until I read through the code that we were doing 4 serial things. And then even worse, we were doing it in the client because when you're going from one page to another, then we were going all the way from the client to the server to get some resources. Come back. You're oh wait, okay, go all the way back to the server, get some resources, come back. It was disgustingly slow, ridiculously disgusting. And so by just changing the code structure, it became really apparent. I was holy crap, this is so obvious now, just because my code is structured well, that where we're getting the data, we should do these 2 things in parallel, not serial. It was just right in front of me. And so I think you want to keep your resource getting really separate from your rendering, because it helps you to see that.
Yeah. Actually, that was our refactoring we did for our 0.6 projects. We moved everything related to the UI into separate components and left only the subscriptions in the actual router. So in app-get and app-post and all of this stuff. So
yeah. I think that's definitely better. And we came to the same conclusion independently.
But there is for example, if we want to have some separate module which uses database, how should we do it?
So my recommendation after having gone down this path is that it's good to have a module that does a lot of data manipulation, but you should always write it synchronous. So Racer has this kind of semi-asynchronous API, which is a little unintuitive if you're not used to it. And the reason why I can get away with it is because of Share. Because Share lets you do stuff and then subsequently syncs it up in a way that's correct. Whereas every other database backend that you're used to, you have to wait till the response comes back before you do the next thing to make sure that actually happens. And what that means is that when you write your code, you should write it synchronously, where you just set some data, set some data, set some data, set some data, and then if you want to wait until everything's done for some sort of confirmation, you just do that collectively. So there's a method called when nothing pending on model that you can use. There's also, you can just use the last callback instead of all the callbacks, and the last callback won't be called until everything's done, because it happens in order. So there's a couple ways to do it. And then basically, similarly, in order to make your module about getting data, to answer your question, to make that be synchronous, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to build a query and then return that query, or a list of queries. And then it's the responsibility of the code that's using it in its controller, its routing controller, to actually do the data request itself. Because that way it can be smart about oh, I can get this in parallel, or oh, no, I can't. I need to get it serially because I need this first to figure out what else I need to get. And so I recommend writing all your functions as that are common data functions. We actually have a lot of them too. As either we're just manipulating data, straight up, synchronous code, no asynchronicity, or returning something that can be used to do asynchronous code, but doesn't actually do it itself. So returning queries is the easiest interface, I think.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks. Okay.
It's helped us a lot. This is kind of a new thing for us. We just started doing this a few weeks ago, actually. It's all fresh.
Okay.
Hi, new people who joined us. I don't know. This is Nate, and I'm Joseph. And Nate,
Welcome.
Nate writes Derby and Racer, and I write ShareJS and LightDB. Yeah, if you have questions, you should introduce yourselves and say hi. But yeah.
Alexander?
I'm Alex.
Hey,
Alex.
How's it going, guys?
Got a bit of a Mexican mobster look going on with the slick back hair.
Oh yeah, I'm just decided not to be crazy today.
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. It's been a while. I dropped off the face of the planet.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was great hanging out with you guys in SF. Really.
Yeah, it was fun.
I am fiddling with Derby Starter right now.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Made a couple of quick changes to it. I don't know if you noticed.
Did you see issues?
I haven't looked at it today.
Oh, it was yesterday or the day before. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a whirlwind here recently.
Yeah. Someone was like, oh, what's this like Redis thing? Do I need the Redis thing? I'm like, no, you don't need the Redis thing. Like, is there a Derby startup? Was that you, Alex, actually? Is there like a Derby startup project that doesn't have Redis then? Like, is this out of date? And I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I need to update that.
Actually, we should remove it from the starter project.
So it wasn't
I wrote
me
that.
that asked about Redis being removed, but I removed it in my fork.
But you what, sorry?
I forked Derby Starter and made Redis optional.
Cool.
Cool.
I solved the
Great.
problem, didn't ask about it.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't intend for people to use that as a module. Like, I intentionally made it as something that is literally something you should use as a starter project thing and not production ready, because otherwise it'll just turn into a configuration nightmare. It's like your configuration should just be the code. Like, copy paste the file and do it or something. Or I know somebody created a boilerplate file, which is maybe a better starting point. But yeah, my intention was literally to use that for like examples. So see how that goes. But yeah, it was just for me like really annoying because I had all these examples that I had to keep doing all this boilerplate stuff for. That the examples were just trying to demo something and they're not real apps.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, but I want to make this work, but I've got like Redis with authentication on and some other point. It's like, yeah.
It's like I don't actually want to support every configuration option in that project. I want it to just be like kind of dumb and like, oh, I just want to get something running. And then when it's like, oh, I really want to make a real project, it's like, okay, now generate a project, and there should be a command line tool for that.
I don't know. I'm a bit nervous about the whole like make a command line tool to copy some files over. Like if you've got that many files to copy over, maybe you should just make a library. Oh, we're already making a library, so why is API bad? But
well, it's because the library isn't a library that's like a library. It's a library that's like, how do I include 12 libraries?
Right.
And I want to include different ones in different situations. Like, I do or don't want to use CoffeeScript. So I do or don't want to use Coffeeify.
Right.
And I do or don't want to use Redis. And I do or don't want to use this database.
Yeah,
so it's not like...
And you probably want a directory for your views and stuff. Yeah, I get it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I've used the Rails command line tool, but I don't know. I'm just afraid of that road, that road is Rails, and then you've got Rails.
Oh, by the way, maybe it's easier to write something like a Yeoman task, or...
That could be fine. I don't know. I actually don't have a strong opinion about this yet. If somebody else wants to own the how do I generate a project, that would be great, because frankly, I don't find it that interesting of a problem. But it's useful. It's helpful to people, but it's just like...
And there are people who really care about that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's just not my strength.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that excited about dev tools, honestly.
Yeah.
But they're really important. Somebody should own them.
Yeah. Where's Pamela?
Yeah, seriously, she's great at the
Yeah. Yeah. And also we have Robbie, who's muted and has no camera. Hi.
Welcome. I've actually got to run in a few minutes.
Yeah, I don't have time. Oh, it's 12:30 anyway. We should probably wrap up. Yeah, are there any other
last questions? We're going to do this earlier next week.
Yeah, we'll do it at we'll do it 10 a.m. San Francisco time, which is going to be, what, 6.5 hours earlier than it is now.
Yeah, it's gonna be about 11 o'clock Moscow time, I guess. So yeah, it should be fine. Even 9 p.m. Moscow time. Yeah.
Wow, that's doable. That's
So,
what time is it then now? Like 5 a.m. or something?
right now I guess it's 3:30 in the morning. 3:30 a.m.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway. Well, yeah, so we'll move it to a different time, and once an Australians pop on, come on Aussies, then we can start bouncing around or something.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do mornings one week, evenings the next or something.
Yeah, whatever. We'll
figure it out.
Yeah, but yeah, next time we'll do it.
Silly global time zone problem.
I know. I know they're going to be on the same time.
Also, for the record, there is no good time zone library for Node. We're using Moment time zone, and it's okay, but its startup time is awful. It's like freaking forever. Terrible.
Yeah.
So we should solve this.
Nate spent like 2 or 3 weeks of his life just fighting with time zones to make time zones working out properly.
It's terrible. It's terribly difficult.
I don't know anything about time zones. He's your guy. He loves it.
I hate it.
Yeah. But yeah, any other quick questions before you head off? All right, cool.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. This is going to be posted on YouTube for everyone who missed it. And yeah, come join us for the next one.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
It's a great idea. I love it.
Thanks, man.
See you,
See you, Alex.
See you, Niraj. Bye.